Good afternoon, all. We wanted to start our event today by taking a moment of silence together to remember George Floyd. Please join me in paying respects together. Our feelings go out to the Floyd family and the Black community. Without delay, let us use this time to redouble our efforts to bring positive change to our communities. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Solomon, and I'm a proud supporter of the Jewish National Fund, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. While I'm the president of a real estate company, my family and I also own the Hartford Yard Goats, the Colorado Rockies AA affiliate. As a baseball fan, when I discovered JNF had been supporting baseball in Israel, I was immediately hooked on the incredible work being done in this space. For generations, baseball has been an important part of American culture. JNF looks to bring this wonderful game that teaches so much of sportsmanship, fosters teamwork, and cultivates confidence to Israel, where it's quickly growing into a beloved pastime. I witnessed this firsthand as my son Joe competed in the Junior Maccabee Games in Israel in 2018. But actually, I really fell in love with Team Israel baseball before that. It was March 2017 at the WBC in Korea, when Team Israel, at the time, ranked 41st in the world in baseball, just after Lithuania, Poland, and Peru, who in true Jewish tradition, as history's underdog, shocked the baseball world, defeating the number 3 team in the world, Korea, the number 5 team in the world, Chinese Taipei, the number 9 team, the Netherlands, and finally, the number 5 team in the world, the perennial powerhouse, Cuba. Now, as a Jewish kid who grew up playing baseball and whose only Jewish baseball story was how Sandy Koufax wouldn't pitch on Yom Kippur, I knew this was monumental, and a new chapter was beginning for Jews in baseball. As you all know, this excitement continued when Team Israel qualified for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, making Israel one of 6 countries represented in the baseball global competition. Unfortunately, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games have been postponed until 2021. And as somebody who was ready to bring my family over there to witness history, I, as well as all of you, I'm sure, are extremely disappointed. But Team Israel has used this time to significantly strengthen its roster for the Olympics, adding 4 players from the WBC team. Major leaguers Ryan Lavarnway, who was the MVP, and also adding Ian Kinsler. All of these players made Aliyah and now hold Israeli citizenship. As most of the players will soon be playing within the framework of their respective teams, the next time Team Israel will practice and prepare together will be in July of 2021, in the weeks leading up to the Olympics. They'll be playing at mini camps around New England and at our own Dunkin' Donuts Park in Hartford. They'll also be barnstorming select stadiums in Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and Maryland. We'll make those details available to you as time comes closer. Today, we'll be hearing from Peter Kurz, who is really the mastermind behind Project Baseball in Israel and the president of Team Israel. Peter, I met in 2016 when he came out to our ballpark and, you know, for raising money to help support the team, and who told me that, you know, baseball was growing and that Team Israel would be participating in the 2020 Olympics. I thought Peter was quite a gentleman, but really a dreamer. He he happened to end up being right, and a real friendship was born there. We'll also be speaking to two members of Team Israel, Jake Fishman and Jeremy Blight, who are local New Englanders. Peter will begin our program by giving us an update on Project Baseball in Israel and an overview of what JNF means to baseball in Israel. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Project Baseball, the program is a partner of JNF that's dedicated to raising funds to create fields and continue supporting the development of baseball and softball in Israel, giving Israeli children the opportunity to learn a game that we love so much here in the United States. Please, as this presentation continues, direct your questions to the host of the chat, and we'll be answering as many as time allows at the end of the hour. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Peter Kurz.
Thank you very much, Josh, and happy to be here with everybody on the Zoom talk. I'm happy to be with the people from the JNF who have really supported Israel incredibly over the last 10 years with Project Baseball. I've been living in Israel for over 30 years now, and I have an admission, a confession to make to the Red Sox fans. I'm originally from New York, but I'm not a Yankees fan, so don't worry about that. But I'm a Mets fan, and I fondly remember 1986. The IAB, the Israel Association of Baseball, we have over 1,000 kids today playing baseball in Israel, from Misgav in the north of Israel to Beersheba in the south, and we're growing. We've grown about 25% every year for the last 3 or 4 years, and we're growing and we're getting better professionally. We have an academy, an IAB academy right now for kids aged 15 to 18 years old, where they're coming to the main field that we have in Petach Tikva, and getting 2 days a week of extra practice time with very good professional coaches. We also send national teams overseas to tournaments in Europe. And I'm mostly proud of our U18 team, our under 18 team, who this past summer won the European Championship B pool, which is the highest level they've ever reached. And those are all Israeli Sabra kids who grew up in Israel in the program here and learned how to play baseball in Israel. Those kids were supposed to go to the A pool competition this coming summer. Unfortunately, that was postponed by 1 year, but hopefully by next summer, we'll be able to be there and see them compete in the A pool. We also build fields in Israel. And right now we're in the midst of building a field together with Project Baseball, who are giving very, very strong financial support. And right now we're doing phase 1 of the Beit Shemesh field. We have a rendering of the field, if we can just put that up now and show what it's going to be like. And this hopefully, eventually, after we raise money for phases 2 and 3, this is what it will look like. Phase 1 is the first phase, just to have a field up there. But phase 2 and 3 are more of the accompanying dugouts and clubhouse and stands and lighting and things like that. Thank you. We're also building a new field in Renana, which is dedicated to Ezra Schwartz, who is a native son of Boston. He was in Israel a few years ago, and unfortunately, he was killed by terrorists in a terrorist incident. His family, his uncle, and his cousins live in Renana, and that field is also being built with the help of the JNF Project Baseball. But the main reason you're here now is not to hear about those projects, but to hear about our adult national team, our international exposure, to hear from the 2 guys who are with us today, the 2 players. And I'll try to give some background and provide some kind of context for their stories, their personal stories. It actually all started in Boston, as a matter of fact. Back in 2006, there was a guy named Larry Barris who, believe it or not, sold bagels to the U.S. Army. He came to me. I met with him in a Starbucks in New York in Thanksgiving of 2006. And if you thought I was a dreamer, he came to me in 2006 and said he wants to set up a professional baseball league in Israel. And I said to him, I'm impressed, and I'll see you soon. And 7 months later, the IDL played in Israel. They opened up the league in Israel, the Israel Baseball League. There were 120 players. There were 6 teams. Each team played a 40-game season. There were managers like Art Shamsky, Ken Holtzman, and Ron Blomberg were all managers there. And it was a big success for that one summer. Unfortunately, he went bankrupt. After that summer, the league went bankrupt. They left us quite a few bills. They also left us some great personal relationships that are continuing until today. Some of you in the Boston area might have been involved in that time. There's actually a gentleman on, Bob Ruxin, who I know was around in that time and was involved. And we still have a lot of those relationships going forward today. Fast forward to 2012 to the Wbc Qualifiers, the first Wbc Qualifiers. MLB came to us and said, we'd like you to put together a team. The WBC has a unique rule, which is called the heritage rule, whereby anyone who can get citizenship for that country can play for that country. So Mike Piazza could play for Team Italy, and Sean Green, because he was Jewish and Israel has the law of return, could play for Team Israel. So in 2012, we had Brett Ausmus as our manager, and Sean Green and Gabe Kapler were player coaches. But unfortunately, we lost in the qualifiers to Spain, and we felt that loss very, 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 very deeply. 4 years later, in 2016, we again went to the qualifiers. This time the qualifiers were in Brooklyn. Better players came to play with us. Jason Marquis, who had just retired, was one of our players. Ike Davis, a few other guys were on that squad in the qualifiers. We won the qualifiers in Brooklyn. It was really a home crowd for Team Israel there. And in January of that year of 2017, there was a visit to Israel, which was commemorated in the documentary called Heading Home, which I assume many of you have seen. Among the other guys who then joined the team were Sam Fold, were Ty Kelly, and were also Jeremy Bleish, who is on this call now and is still with us today. So the guys were there. They got a real feeling for what Israel was like, what baseball in Israel was like. There's a fantastic scene there where they get to the one field we have there, and they're mobbed by kids there, and they can barely get onto the field, but they're mobbed there. They were there for about 5 or 6 hours, signing autographs and doing selfies for probably all the kids in Israel who play baseball. Later on, 2 months later, we went to Korea, we went to Japan. As Josh said, we did very well there, even though in the beginning, ESPN called us the Jamaican bobsled team. So we were the 16th team to qualify out of 16 teams. It was difficult to get major leaguers to come all the way to Korea. Jock Peterson didn't want to come. Ryan Braun didn't want to come. Some others didn't want to come. But in the end, we did the miracle. And we won the 3 games in Korea, and we beat Cuba and Japan. And out of 16 teams, Team Israel came in 6th place. And that was quite an accomplishment, So I had a situation where after that tournament, I had a national team of native Israelis who were holding Israeli citizenship and were playing for our national team in the European Championship B pool. We were sort of mediocre in the middle there. And on the other hand, a team of Jewish American baseball players who had played for Team Israel, including Jeremy Bleish, who were very proud of playing for Team Israel, had Israeli jerseys across their chests, had been to Israel, were with the kids there and everything, and wanted to continue playing for Israel. But I had no framework for them. The International Baseball Federation, the WBSC, then came out with the announcement that baseball would be back in the Olympics in 2020, and what the path was to get there. I put together our own roadmap, which basically had 4 tournaments that we had to win in a period of 2 months. I sat with Eric Holtz, who was our manager at the time, in New York. I remember exactly where it was in 2017, and I laid out the whole roadmap for him, and he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said to me, "You're crazy," but he said, "I'm with you." He said, "I'm with you." And we started working on that plan, and in 2018, I talked to 10 players from the WBC team, and I told them about coming on Aliyah, and they were all very happy to come on Aliyah, and they all came on Aliyah and became Israeli citizens and had passports. And in 2019, 4 more players came. And in June of 2019, we ended up going to Bulgaria, to Blavolgrad, Bulgaria, which is a hotbed of baseball in Europe. And we won the B Pool championship against other teams, which also had American players on their teams. Italy was filled with Italian Americans. Greece was filled with Greek American players who had all gotten citizenship. So we weren't the only smart ones, just our Americans were better than their Americans. But the team was half Americans who had gotten Israeli citizenship and half Israeli Sabras who had Israeli citizenship before. And together, bringing together the Israelis and the American Jewish guys, we had a powerhouse of a great team, and we won that B pool. 2 weeks later, we had to go to Lithuania to play in the playoffs. We won the playoff. 6 weeks later, we had to go to Germany to play in the A pool, in the European Championship A pool. At that time, I brought more players on board who made Aliyah and got their Israeli citizenship. Among them, Denny Valencia, who was a major leaguer for 8 years, Nick Rickles, and also Jeremy Bleish. Jeremy came to Israel, got his citizenship, and within 3 days was already in Germany playing for us. The guys will talk about it when they speak, I'm sure Jeremy will talk about it, but to have a team Israel playing in Germany in the European Championship was quite a feat for us. It was the highest level we'd ever been at, and it had a great meaning for a lot of people. My parents were both Holocaust survivors, and I know Jeremy's grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and there was a lot of meaning behind being in Germany and playing Germany, and actually playing Germany in a very close game that we won in the 10th inning, and that was a very significant game. So we won. In the A pool, the top 5 teams from the A pool would then go a week later to the European Olympic Qualifiers, which were in Italy. We came in 4th place, so we made it to the European Olympic Qualifiers. We all flew to Italy 3 days later. In Italy, there was the Olympic it was the European African Olympic Qualifiers. So South Africa joined the top 5 teams of Europe, and we then proceeded to defeat Spain, who a week before had been number 3 in Europe, Netherlands, who a week before had been the number 1 team in Europe, and we had lost to them a week before, and then we defeated Italy, the number 2 team in Europe. And defeating those 3 teams put us in an excellent position where the next 2 games, we had to win one of the next 2 games. So naturally, we played the Czech Republic the next game and we lost. And then we had to play South Africa the final game. We defeated South Africa, and Israel was in the Olympics. The players implemented the roadmap to perfection, and they are now Olympians. Jeremy Bleish and Jake Fishman are both Olympians, along with the other guys. In the meantime, as Josh said, we've added some players, among them Ryan Lavarnway, who was our MVP, Jake Fishman, who was one of the guys in the WBC. He didn't get to come to Korea, but he was on our roster. And also probably our best player going forward, Ian Kinsler, who had just retired, 12-year MLB player, 4-year All-Star. He is now going to be part of the team going forward to the Olympics, which we thought would be in 2 months, but unfortunately is going to be only in 14 months. Why is this also important? The main goal of ours is to develop baseball in Israel. It's not to be in the Olympics or not to win the Olympics, but to make Israel a bigger sport. As I mentioned before, we have now 1,000 kids playing baseball in Israel. We want to double and triple that number. The way to do that is to make a big splash in the Olympics, because Israel is people who have been to Israel. Israel is a big soccer and basketball country. Baseball is less known of a sport, but the Olympics are big. There have been 9 medals, Israeli medals in the Olympics in the past. They've all been individual medals. This is the first time there'll be a team sport from Israel playing in the Olympics since 1976, since the Montreal Games. So that's 44 years. So there's a lot building on this team. We also have a very good chance of getting a medal. There are 6 teams altogether. There are 3 medals. So our chances are basically 50-50, although it's not like that. But we have a good chance to get a medal. And everybody remembers teams that got medals. They don't remember teams that didn't get medals. So the fact that we're going to the Olympics, coming together with the building of the fields, because the old adage, if you build it, they will come, is completely true. And today in Israel, we have 1 baseball field, which is sort of like a decent high school field in Boston. And that's all. Everybody else plays on lots and soccer fields. And now we're looking to build 2 fields, as I mentioned before, in Beit Shemesh and Renana, together with the help of the JNF Project Baseball. So one of the things we're doing here, we'll hear the guys talking, but we're also looking to solicit donations for Project Baseball. And one of the ways you can do it is to donate. And one of the things that we're doing right now is an added incentive is if anybody donates $2,020, 2020, they will receive, excuse me, they'll receive an original Team Israel jersey. And if anybody gives us $5,000 donation, they'll receive a jersey with their name on it, personalized for their name and their number, whatever number they want to put on it. But it's a number that we can use later on in the Olympics also. So without any further ado, this is the address to donate the funds. And without any further ado, so please help support us. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the 2 players. They both grew up in the Boston area. Jeremy Bleish was the first draft choice in 2008, unfortunately, of the New York Yankees, but we won't hold that against him. He went to Stanford University. He made his major league debut in 2018. and today he works for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And Jake Fishman, as I mentioned, he hasn't played for us yet, but we have a lot of hope for him in the Olympics. He played last year on the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, which is the AA team of Toronto, and is headed for hopefully their AAA team whenever they start playing again. Both of them, by the way, also played for the Wareham Gatemen of the Cape Cod League, and they are both very proud Israeli citizens, passport holders. So without any further ado, Jake, why don't you start off everything and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can talk to Jeremy.
For sure. Thank you guys all for being here. I'm happy to talk to all of you as well. So I grew up in Sharon, Massachusetts, and was kind of a small kid, loved baseball, always played with my family, and ended up going to Union College in Schenectady, New York, and played baseball there. They're a Division III school, and put on a lot of weight, and eventually ended up getting drafted, and that was just an amazing experience. So I've been with the Blue Jays for the past 4 years, and just I remember getting the phone call from Jerry Weinstein about becoming on the roster for the WBC team in 2017, and I was just so happy to be on the roster and be a part of the team, even though I didn't even get to go. I was super happy, just watching the team continue to progress and make it so far as they did, and now really happy to be able to represent Israel in the Olympics in 2021.
Thanks, Peter, for the introduction. I know I give you a hard time, in all in good fun a lot of times, but your hard work really does pay off, and it's clear by calls like this. As Peter alluded to, I joined in 2016 when we played in the qualifier in Brooklyn, and didn't really know what to expect. Growing up as a child, I grew up a conservative in a conservative Judaism family, and bar mitzvah, and my father grew up Orthodox in Brooklyn, so I always was aware of my background, my heritage, my grandparents being Holocaust survivors. But for better or for worse, throughout my professional baseball career, sometimes in college as well, baseball is a game where there aren't that many Jews. At least there weren't for me, and I think Jake can attest to that as well. So the biggest thing for me is I think I was always in touch with my Judaism. My parents did an incredible job of instilling that culture and community piece as a child. But what Israel Baseball has done for me, and Peter has helped me with, is in my professional career, my greatest years of growth in my life, has helped me become a more comfortable person in my surroundings. We brought attention to the general game of baseball as the Israel team, and as a result, people started asking questions about Israel and Judaism, and things that they never knew about me that maybe I never even brought up in a clubhouse setting, because I took the path of least resistance at times. It allowed me to really sink in and be myself and share who I was and share my history as a family, as a culture, and the history of my grandparents as well. So I thank you for that. I thank you guys for being here today, and look forward to interacting with you guys on this call.
Jeremy, thank you. Jake, thank you guys so much for participating today. I laugh, Jeremy, when you tell your story. I don't know too many people whose path to the majors started as, I was a young Jewish kid in New Orleans. I didn't know there were Jews in New Orleans, but glad that you're proudly representing, and you went on to be a first-round draft pick of the Yankees. And Jake, in looking at your history coming from Sharon and leading all of college baseball with the lowest ERA in 2016 is pretty impressive. I know you now because you play in the same league as our Hartford Yard Goats, as that nasty lefty that puts all lefties down. So again, thank you guys for being here. One of the questions that I wanted to ask was, and this is for you, Jeremy, since you had the opportunity to play for Team Israel. What was the moment? Obviously, you caught Team Israel caught the American Jewish community by surprise with what you guys did. What was the moment that you realized that you were playing and accomplishing something that was so significant, and that the moment was bigger than just you? What was that moment for you?
I think it was two small moments, and I think the first moment was when we stood as a team on the foul line. We had, usually during the national anthem in most games, most teams will have their hats on, and as a sign of respect, obviously you take your hat off, and you allow you. In the WBC, they play each team's national anthem. So I think they went with Korea first, or maybe we were the visitor. We were the visitors, so maybe they allowed us to hear the Atikva first. So we took off our hats, and the other team took off their hats, but we had yarmulkes on, and they looked at us confused, right? And nobody really knew what to do. And no disrespect. They just didn't understand what the yarmulkes were. They didn't understand if they should put their hats back on out of respect. It's a very respectful culture. They just didn't know if it should be hats on, hats off. That was one moment where I think there was like a really the moment of like solidarity as a team. We were saying, all right, like this is game time. This is it. We're in a foreign place, in a foreign, language. We don't know. Like we better tighten up, and we better get ready to go. That was the first moment. And the second moment was shortly thereafter, probably 3.5, 4 hours later, when we won against Korea. So at the beginning, they didn't really know who we were. They didn't really know what we were doing. And then here we are. We should have predicted not to win that game, and we won it. And all of a sudden, people were really confused. Almost like I remember walking from the clubhouse to the two buses that they had for us, and there were security guards everywhere. Not that we felt in danger, but even they were confused. Like they didn't know if there was going to be any sort of yelling. It was barricaded off. We just had done something that we shocked the world in a sense. And I think those two moments for me were the moments of like feeling connected with Judaism, feeling connected with Israel, most importantly, and also just as importantly, feeling connected with each other. And I think for me, those were the moments where I was like, wow, we just kind of shocked the world. We made a wave. And, as time went on from there, we felt the impact of those waves as people started to reach out and there was media about it.
Wow, that's a great story. Jake, I know you haven't had a chance yet to play for Team Israel, but maybe you can talk a little bit about, although Sharon is a community that has a strong Jewish population, what was it like being an all-star baseball player, whether it be in the minors or in college? I'm sure you were one of the very few Jews on those teams. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience is like? And Jeremy, after, I'd love to hear your view as well.
Yeah, and I think Jeremy touched on this a little bit and did a good job. I didn't really realize what I was missing until I was with a group of guys that were all Jewish baseball players. And it's like, you just come to this realization that you almost feel free. Like you don't, everybody is similar and you're not afraid to just completely be yourself. And it's normally it's pretty lonely in terms of the Jewish landscape in the baseball world. I've had, I believe, one Jewish friend in the Blue Jays system, but we've never been on the same team at the same time, or at least for longer than a month or something. And aside from that, it's Sharon has a strong Jewish presence. So in high school, I did have Jewish friends that played baseball, but after that, I was kind of the lone person. So it wasn't until I took my trip to Israel and spent some time with a few, about 5 of us went over, and just had that realization that you're instantly connected to them in ways that are difficult to describe.
Yeah,
No,
Jake.
Well said. Go ahead, please.
Sorry to interrupt. No, Jake hit the nail on the head. I think the normal process for someone, especially in professional baseball where there's so much turnover and so many moving parts throughout a year, is if Jake and I were teammates and both not Jewish or both didn't know we were Jewish, we'd walk in, and if maybe there was a rain out or there was a free moment, you try to get to know someone. You kind of say, well, where are you from? Or where did you go to school? Or maybe what do your parents do for work? Do you have siblings? Like there's all these like very peripheral type of questions that are almost not non-personal whatsoever. But I think once the WBC started, or at least the qualifiers, you walk in, you're like, oh, you're Jewish? I'm Jewish? Okay, let's go. I know. I definitely know, I got to know some of your family dynamics. I got to be able to, relate to some of those. There was like this quick start where you got past like that peripheral, non-personal getting to know one another that is very common in professional baseball, and all of a sudden you can just take off from there. And I think that's why we had such good chemistry, is we all, to steal Jake's word, we felt probably a little bit freer than we ever had on a baseball field.
I can just also mention, it's interesting because you see the integration between the Israeli players and the Jewish American players as well. Less so in the WBC, but in Bulgaria, when we were there in Bulgaria in the first tournament this past summer, the team was about half and half. So the Israeli players were very open, very loud, as Israelis generally are. The Americans were more closed the first day, but after that, they became just as loud and just as boisterous as the Israeli players, just as friendly, just as open, singing songs, learning Hebrew, learning curse words in Hebrew, and the Israelis were learning American baseball terms, which they knew, but they didn't know it in the ways that the Americans had done it. And the two sides, today there's a lot of schism between American Jews and Israeli Jews, unfortunately. And I think a thing like baseball here is able to bring these two worlds together, to cooperate together, to have the American Jews play for an Israeli team and to be Israelis, to become Israeli citizens, is incredible for the Israeli psyche and the Israeli mentality, because it gets us to be that much better. And having the Americans help Israel win an Olympic medal is an incredible kind of thing.
So Jerry Weinstein, who was the coach of the WBC for Israel, and who was the coach of our Hartford Yard Goats, communicated something to me about how important it was while he was there, but that he wasn't raised in a particularly religious way, and he wasn't as in touch with his Jewish background. But what he realized was that a lot of who he was, and a lot of the, is born out of Jewish culture. And he found that on the team, which I know, Jeremy being a grandson of two Holocaust survivors, the culture of survival, and that you're living for something greater than yourself, clearly was passed on to you. Can you talk about winning in Germany and what that meant?
Sure, thank you. I think, like you said, there's that personality trait of survival that I don't think I think I had it in me. My mother, who's on this call, she could probably attest to that as a kid I had some abrasive moments, but all in good intent. So as a kid, I don't think you know how to tailor them the right way sometimes. But as time went on, specifically when my father passed away, I was able to kind of put a lot of those personality traits into context of maybe why I acted a certain way or where I got those traits, and maybe what my grandparents went through. There's a little bit extra fight sometimes. And I was really, over the last 5.5 years, I've been able to put those traits to good use. And I think it just comes from being able to, I think it's an ingrained genetic, also, environmental learned characteristic, but in baseball, it fits, right? It's a game of failure. So you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. And that still means you're really successful. But if that's the case and adversity is so common at every angle, then it's almost like the perfect personality trait to have. So I'm thankful for, obviously what my grandparents fought through, and this is the least, I'm appreciative of those quality traits.
Well, that grit and determination that you guys have shown, and I know we talked about this before. When you go to Israel, it's so pervasive, and it's such it makes you so proud to be tied to, being Jewish and the Israeli people. It's really a strong tie for us. I wanted to move on and ask Peter a question. Peter, I know in 2017, the Jewish community in the United States went bananas when you guys did as well as you did. Maybe the best game I've ever seen was you guys beating Korea in 10 innings. It was unbelievable. What was the reaction of Israelis with that win? How significant was that back home in Israel?
Most Israelis were rather blasé in the beginning. After we won the qualifiers and then went to the main tournament, I tried to get on sports talk shows, and it was like, okay, baseball, you guys are all American Jews. It's not really an Israeli team. And then after the first game beating Korea, by the way, we beat Korea. It was about midnight. We went back to the hotel. We had to get up 8 o'clock in the morning to come to the game against Taiwan. We played Taiwan, I believe it was 11 o'clock in the morning. We were done by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were 2-0, and nobody else in the WBC had played yet. And Israel was 2-0. So the Israeli press, the sports press, got more wind of it after we beat both Korea and Taiwan. They started talking to me. Korea is 6 hours ahead of Israel, so it was very difficult for me. I was ending up being at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, being on Israeli talk shows at 8, 9 o'clock at night. So first it was sports reporters getting to me. After we beat Taiwan, it was more of the sports talk shows getting to me. After we beat the Netherlands, it was regular radio getting to me. And by the time we beat Cuba over in Japan, I was on Israeli television on the main news show at 8 o'clock in the evening, being interviewed by the sports writer of the main news show. So there was more interest there, and I was out there and talking to everybody. Shlomo Lipitz, who was one of a few Israelis on the team, was out there talking in Hebrew to the press. When I got back to Israel, I was sure that everybody would be, we'd have double and triple the number of kids playing baseball when I got back in Israel, and how enthusiastic everybody would be. And I got back, and a week later, everybody forgot about it because nobody knew the WBC. What was it? It was the World Championship. It wasn't anything that was in the minds of the Israelis. That's why I'm saying the Olympics will be much different. The Olympics, after we got back from Italy and we qualified for the Olympics, I went to the Olympic Committee in Israel. And I met with them. I'd met with them a year before, and I told them about my plans. I told them about the whole roadmap and everything. And they looked at me very skeptically, and they said, "You're not going to get any financial help from us for this, but win it and come back, and we'll see." So I came back, and a week later they were there, and they were all hugging me and saying congratulations and everything. In the end, instead of a 40-man delegation, a player delegation, Israel had to add 24 new players. So they had a 65-man delegation going over to Tokyo. And I would imagine that the government was a little upset at me because all of a sudden they had 50% more players going over. But they kept their cool. They even told me a year before that when they applied for the Tokyo Olympics, they had to fill out a form. And they had to say, okay, where do they think they have a chance to get medals? So the judo is good, and the windsurfing is good. And they put down a baseball team because they heard that Peter was talking. And the Japanese sent back the form, and they said, no way, Israel's going to have a baseball team in the Olympics. So forget about that. But anyway, when we got back after the Olympic qualifiers, and we're now an Olympic team, that puts us a little bit on the map. Now we're already getting attention. I'm getting more interviews on radio and television. People are talking about us. And I have no doubt that if we get one of those Olympic medals, if we can come back in August of 2021 back to Israel with an Olympic medal, it will be incredible news in Israel, and people will definitely then hear a lot about it. Because even today, people say, there's no baseball in Israel. Only the people who know me say that. But otherwise, there's no baseball in Israel.
They won't be feeling that way for long.
Right.
Jake, what was making Aliyah like? Can you talk a little bit about your experience and what it was like over there in Israel for you and the experience of making Aliyah?
Yep. For me, I loved it. I had always wanted to go to Israel, just, make the trip, whether that was through like one of the programs that will take you over there. But it always seemed like baseball had prevented me in some way from making the trip happen. And then before I knew it, baseball is guiding me to make the trip. So that to have the two worlds collide was very, it just meant a lot. And so when I originally got over there, I was just amazed at everything that was going on. I truly loved it. All of the experiences, the places that we went, the food, and I would have to say that my favorite aspect was just meeting the people there, and getting to know everybody, and just learning what the culture is like, and it was just a very great experience for me.
All right. Jeremy, how about you?
It was a great experience. It was a very like rushed process for me because Peter did an awesome job of I was finishing up my season in the States, and Peter was doing a lot of legwork to try to make it all work. He was already in Germany with the team, so I flew over. That was my third time there, and all three very different trips. I went on Birthright in 2011. I went on the little tour we had in 17. I shouldn't say little, it was an incredible trip. And then this was my third. So the first two had been very different. This was even more different in the sense that the whole team and all my teammates and Peter, everyone I knew with Israel Baseball was already gone. So I had one guy who was driving me around who was awesome. But besides that, I was on my own. So I very fittingly felt like an Israeli, right? It was, I got there, I did some paperwork. I was waiting to hear when I needed to go get settled the final paperwork. But, I walked around by myself. We got dinner, ice cream. I tried to talk to people. It was like I was becoming part of the culture. And I think it was probably the simplest of my trips. And it was my favorite because I was able to really feel like I wasn't a tourist anymore. I wasn't, I felt like I belonged. I felt like I fit in. And it was a great feeling.
So it wasn't just to make your mother proud.
Exactly. Not just to make my mother proud. It was I really wanted to just, I tried to ask people where to go get food. You don't get any direct answers sometimes. So I was all going in all different directions, but I like that. It was really
Jake
fun.
told me that it was, that Peter had promised him falafel for life.
I'm still working on my contract with Peter for that, but he said
The gold medal first.
I just wanted to make one comment real quick, just to kind of add on what Peter has said and Josh as well. I think it's important, and it's obviously a large scale idea that people have doubted us as a baseball team, and in history have unfortunately doubted our homeland and our religion and all these things. And it's funny, I think Peter gets excited when people say no to him. It's like, all right, I got him right where I want him. And I think it's pretty cool because he's heard no a lot, and I think he's continued. He almost like it just keeps going, and we wouldn't be without where we are now without that type of legwork and foundation that I think sometimes goes unnoticed.
Thank you.
You're certainly not doing it for the money, Peter.
No, no, not for the glory either.
So, Peter, who is Team Israel going to be playing when they're over in Tokyo in the Olympics?
Right now, there are 6 teams who are going to be in the Olympic tournament. 4 of the teams have been decided. Israel will be the European African representative. Team Japan is there as the host team, and 2 teams who won the Premier 12 tournament last year, Mexico and Korea, will also be there. So those are the 4 teams out of the 6 teams right now. In addition, there'll be an Americas tournament, which was supposed to be in April. It will be delayed till sometime next year, which is basically 1 team out of the U.S., Canada, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Cuba, All those countries will play in one tournament and one team will go to the Olympics. And the second and the third place teams will then play an additional tournament together with China, Taiwan, Australia, and the Netherlands. And from that group, one team will go up. So there'll be 6 teams altogether. It's a sort of a modified round robin tournament. It's a little bit strange the way it's done, but there'll be anywhere between 3 and 7 games. And it's going to take about 10 days or so. And it's a nice period of time because there's a lot of off days in between. So you don't need, it's not, your pitching staff is not all that stretched out. And we have a good team, guys who are really into it, guys who are together. And one of the things that I noticed in Korea and Japan was that both those teams get very tense and very tight. And our team is totally loose. Our guys are totally loose out there having a good time. Nothing to lose. We're underdogs, and we like being the underdog.
Not just the baseball team. The Israelis,
Yes.
we're used to that.
Exactly.
And Jeremy or Jake, what would you say to the kids out there who haven't been able to play in Little League now? What can they be doing to keep sharp since most organized baseball has been postponed? And what have you guys been doing to stay sharp?
So what I would say to kids that have missed their Little League season, first off, I feel bad for them because they're missing out on just being able to enjoy playing baseball as a kid, and that's one of the best times to be playing baseball. There's so many things that you can be doing just in your backyard. All you need is a round ball, and even just having a friend there giving you soft toss or playing catch and working on your fielding practice. And there's a lot of things that you can do. For me personally, I've just been working out in my house, and I have a single catch partner that I throw with. But they're just continuing to do baseball activity and continuing to be a kid and play and do all different types of sports, so you can get different movements in, and that's going to help your athleticism in the long run. So if you eventually decide to single in on just baseball, that's going to help you in the long run.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy?
Echoing some of Jake's comments, I think just you'll have plenty of time to hone your fine baseball skills. I think it's important to be outside as much as you can and just play different sports and be athletic and just grow and have fun. I think that's the most important part at this point in your life, really all life, but I think it's important just to focus on those things. And then when the time comes to when baseball kicks back up, you can really work on the baseball specific stuff. And as far as me, luckily I'm a pitcher, so I'm able to do what I need to do on my own for the most part, playing catch, running, strength training, all those things that are pretty simple yet foundational to being a pitcher. Luckily I'm was around and will be around Pirates Major League team, traveling with them, so I'll have access to all those resources and plenty of people to throw to and play catch with, and they're all just as excited as I am about it. I get a lot of questions about it, so we've really got some good following at this point.
Now, has it struck the two of you that you guys are Olympians? You are now in a pretty elite class, and has it hit you yet? And is it something that you guys grew up and dreamed of as kids to participate in the Olympics?
It hasn't hit me yet. I think there are moments where it's like, wow, even when Peter was talking about his introduction, it's a pretty crazy thing. When we went to Israel in January and sat through some of the briefing meetings about, just logistical stuff, it's pretty amazing. The facilities they're building in Tokyo, or they built and will hold for us in Tokyo, and the organization that goes into it, and just the sheer volume of people that it brings, and to be one of the people that that a lot of these Olympic goers are coming to watch is a pretty special feeling. Immersed in the village and learning about other people's culture and seeing other athletes, it's something I'm really looking forward to.
It's interesting
Great.
because Danny Valencia is still asking me all the time, when is he going to be on a cereal box in Israel? And I said to him, it's going to take a long time to get you on a cereal box in Israel. But in answer to the last question, I just wanted to mention that in Israel, you know, we're probably about 2 or 3 weeks more advanced in the United States in terms of the coronavirus. And our kids went back to school about 2 weeks ago. They also went back to baseball practice 2 weeks ago. They've all got to come to the field in their masks and everything. And they've got to maintain distance from each other, and they've got to use their own equipment. They've got to have their own helmets and their own bats and obviously their own mitts. And next week, we're going to have already the adult league is going to start playing in Israel next week. So they're going to start having games where the umpire is going to stay behind the pitcher and the catcher is going to stay a little bit further back from the hitter than he does. So if either Jeremy or Jake want to come over to Israel and play in our league, you're welcome to come over and play and join us there, and anybody else as well.
Can we ask a question?
Sure. Go ahead, please.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I'm sorry for signing on late. I had another Zoom meeting before this one, but I'm so happy to meet you guys. I'll just make it brief. I'm 64, a 60-year-old man. I have 11 grandchildren living in Israel, and I love baseball, and I'm so excited for you guys that you are doing this. It's just an amazing thing. It's like we are the underdogs in everything, and yet we always manage to rise to the occasion, and I'm very proud of you guys. My question is, do you visit other settlements? I have grandchildren that live in different parts of Israel, and they live in, you know, settlements, and they would be very excited to meet you guys. And I was there this past summer. I brought baseballs and bats with me, and I got that whole settlement to play baseball, but I haven't been able to organize it into, let's say, like a team or a league or something. And my question is, do you guys visit those places, or do you have any suggestions how we could start getting baseball into other parts of Israel that aren't necessarily the American hot spots like Beit Shemesh and Efrat or whatever, wherever the Americans are living?
You missed the beginning, but as I mentioned in the beginning, there's over 1,000 kids playing baseball in Israel. From those 1,000 kids, you're probably true that about 300 or 400 are children of American immigrants, but you probably have about 500 or 600 who are Israeli Sabras. And if you come to Tel Aviv on a Friday afternoon to the Sport Tech in Tel Aviv, you'll hear about 60 kids playing baseball and talking in Hebrew and talking about a pitcher who's a magish and a catcher who's a tofes. And our two guys who run the organization are both Israelis. They're children of Americans, but they're both Israelis. They grew up in Israel. They speak fluent Hebrew. The organization is Israeli and Hebrew. And we have teams also in the settlements that you mentioned. We have teams out there. We have teams all over Israel. And your kids can certainly join. Tell them to go on baseball.org.io. And we'd be happy to help them and everything. The guys who are here, our Olympic team, 4 of the Israeli guys are back in Israel. Everybody's Israeli. We have 24 Israeli players. But 4 of the Sabras are back in Israel because 3 of them were going to colleges in the States. And the colleges are over, but they're back in Israel now. But the other guys are all Jewish American players who hopefully will be playing baseball soon in America. So they're there. When they come to visit, hopefully we'll have some guys coming in Sukkot. In Sukkot, we'll have then clinics in Israel, and we'll invite all the kids who are part of the IAB to come to those clinics and to see all our players as we did when they were there before.
Yeah, and my wife and I, Peter was nice enough to take us on a Friday to basically their equivalent of like a Little League park in Tel Aviv. And, you know, the only difference was kids were speaking Hebrew, and instead of having hot dogs, there were people eating falafel. That was the difference. It felt like home. But we have another question from somebody, one of the folks in the audience who are wondering if any of the players who made Aliyah have participated in the military. Is that something anybody is contemplating?
No. When you make Aliyah, if you're over 22 years old, you do not have to go to the military. the way the law is based today. So all our players who made Aliyah were over 22, and none of them had to do Army service. So that was not an issue with anybody. If you come before 22, you have to do Army service, but not if you're over 22. And all our guys were over 22. So
Okay.
that's not an issue. There's also there's two questions that the players ask me when I tell them that I wanted to make Aliyah. One of them is the Army issue, and the other one is the taxes issue. So I can tell them now that only the U.S. government charges a U.S. citizen who lives out of the United States taxes, has to fill out a tax return. Israel, if you're an Israeli citizen and you live in the States, you do not have to pay Israeli taxes if you're not a resident of Israel.
We can't vouch for his advice from a tax standpoint. We're just here to talk baseball. Well, I just wanted to, first of all, thank Peter and Jake and Jeremy for providing a great presentation and discussion, and everybody who participated on this call. We really appreciate everybody's support, and we look forward to seeing Team Israel compete in the 2021 Olympics. You guys have already made us hugely proud, and it's such a special accomplishment to even make it to the Olympics. Thanks again to everyone for being here this afternoon, and we hope you enjoyed the discussion. JNF has, as many of you know, virtual programs that are offered every week, and the schedule can be found on the website at jnf.org. All times of the day and all time zones. Also, a friendly reminder that major gifts to Project Baseball, you'll receive a personalized Team Israel jersey, and you can coach first base, potentially. However, we really just want people to continue to follow the team and support the state of Israel. We wish everyone a safe and a wonderful day, and appreciate your support of JNF and Team Israel. Thank you very much for all being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.